Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Film Frauds. Myself, Matt, and my two co-hosts, Mark
Hello.
and Tyler,
Hello.
provide our completely unprofessional, 100% biased opinions on the movies of today, tomorrow, and yesteryear. And today, we're back to Matt's recommendations, even though this is the first time I think we've recommended a movie that none of us have seen. Part of
Not a
my
recommendation.
Boogie Nights.
Oh, Boogie Nights is right.
Wait, it's not a
Well,
recommendation.
speaking of director series.
Yeah, it wasn't even say director series. You didn't start off with
Oh,
that.
well,
Just keep going. Just keep going.
Speaking of director series, we're continuing my director series with Park Chan-wook. We started with Old Boy, and now we're moving on to Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which comes first in the trilogy, actually. And I think that'll explain a lot when we go into our review. So we're going to start off with our general impressions, and then we're going to go right into spoilers because this movie is like 2 decades old. So you've been warned for spoilers and all of that. So, Mark, what did you think of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance?
this movie took a while for me to get into. I'd say like the first 45 minutes, I wouldn't say nothing really happens, but nothing of like great significance happens. I guess I think in the first 45 minutes the kidnapping happens, but it's not like you don't like see this great like heist sequence or whatever. It's just like now the girl is within their possession, I guess you could say. And then the movie like really sort of picks up, or like you definitely get these really impressive sequences. And the movie has like, for me, like there's like a lot of great moments and very impressive like camera techniques and whatnot. But overall, I was just like, I'm kind of like lukewarmish. I feel like maybe my opinion might change when like you guys might point something out to me that I missed. But because Park Chan-wook, I mean, his movies are they're like kind of dense a little bit.
You haven't even seen the dense ones, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah,
I haven't seen The Handmaiden, I know.
Or Lady Vengeance is gonna be a ride when we get to that one.
Or Thirst. Thirst is a feast.
I gotta watch Thirst.
Oh jeez.
Tyler, what did you think of this movie?
I've seen a good portion of Park Chan-wook movies. I haven't seen Sympathy for Lady Vengeance or Joint Security Squad. Is that it?
Yeah, well, JSA, I think let's call it.
Okay, and then there's one like something cyborg in the center.
I'm a cyborg, but it's okay.
Those are the only ones I haven't seen. So I've seen everything else, and this is probably my least favorite one of his movies. This is like this one feels like a precursor, which it eventually is, but it feels like it's a precursor to Old Boy in terms of its kind of themes, and it feels like it's something that is an idea being developed but isn't fully there yet. I struggled a lot with this movie in exactly how kind of simple it is. And I mean that in a way that it's not saying or doing anything I think is unique or creative. I think it's a very generic take on vengeance. Because in Old Boy, it's in the same, basically in Old Boy, it's vengeance, but there's kind of like, Matt, you pointed out in our review, like this Greek mythos to it, and it feels very fantastical and larger than life, and it's vengeance in how like encompassing and awful it is, taken to the 10th degree. And in this one is a very simple, vengeance is bad, and there's nothing unique about it, and there's nothing that stands out in the movie to me. I was very kind of just came and went. Nothing really stuck with me in this movie. I feel like I'm probably in the minority for this, though. This is not a well-reviewed movie on Rotten Tomatoes in any capacity. I know.
Oh, it really isn't.
Yeah, it's not well received, but it also has a very long like Letterboxd has a 3.8 out of 5. It's IMDb has a 7.6 out of 10. People like this movie, I think, a lot more than I did.
Yeah, I would say that I like it a lot. I think a lot of stuff really sticks out to me that I enjoy because I'm a huge Park Chan-wook fan. I have seen most of his well-known movies except for Thirst, and I'm not a cyborg, but that's okay. So I've seen The Handmaiden. I've watched The Handmaiden 4 times. I've seen Old Boy twice. I've seen Lady Vengeance. I've seen JSA, and now I've seen Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. This would be my first viewing of it. And there are elements of Park Chan-wook that I love that are not in this movie, which I think we'll get more into during our spoiler discussion. But I appreciate that he sticks to like those themes of how vengeance. So like it's sort of a cliche thing to be like, oh, vengeance ends up serving no one at the end. But I like the realistic consequences of this movie. and I liked a lot of like the directing choices. I think there are some really good shots, even though it lacks like the theatricality of some of his better work. I would say that there are some slow parts, and I didn't find like the main character be either the main characters be completely interesting or like sympathetic. But I would say like this is still a solid movie. It's my least favorite of the Park Chan-wook movies, but that's like saying it's the worst movie of a bunch of movies I really really love. So it's not really like a detriment when you think about it in the long run. But I think the most interesting thing, and thing that stuck out to me the most was like the lack of like, as I just said, the lack of theatricality in this movie. This movie feels more realistic than Old Boy or any of his other movies. Like, Mark, as someone who's only seen Old Boy, did you find yourself like missing that element of it, or?
Yes, I definitely was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stylistic choices in Old Boy that I absolutely adored, and I was just hoping for that in this film, and I was kind of disappointed. So tell me, when did this movie come out? When did Old Boy come out?
2002.
This movie was like 2002.
And Old Boy's 2004.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's okay, that's cool. Because I was like sort of under the assumption that this was the second one in the series, and I was like,
yeah, we did them backwards for some reason.
Yeah.
I
wanted to start with a movie that we're all familiar with before we went into this movie,
Yeah.
which I think was probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like trying to think, like, because I was under the assumption that this is the second one. I'm like, why did Park Chan-wook tone it down for this? I was just trying to like figure that out, because like I was like, is this like genius and I don't know it yet? But like when the movie finished, I was like, I don't really think I saw anything remarkable.
Sorry, Old Boy was 2003. I don't want to just...
Okay.
You fraud.
A fraud.
Yeah, I definitely 100% prefer Old Boy. This movie's still good. Like what you said, Matt. Like in comparison to like other people's films, this is still like a great film. But like in between like Old Boy and this, it's Old Boy for sure.
Yeah. So there's Matt. You mentioned that the fact that the movie has realistic consequences because it's a more grounded movie, and ultimately, I think that's something that benefits but also hurts the movie in some capacity. One of my favorite, I've said this before in the other podcast whenever we talk about South Korean movie. One of my favorite South Korean movies is I Saw the Devil, which takes the concept of vengeance. And
I gotta rewatch that movie. I haven't seen it in years.
Great.
I know. I need to rewatch that.
I have sung its praises to high heaven, and essentially, what I love about that movie is it explores the concept of vengeance. But it's so violent and so visceral that the line between good guy and bad guy gets blurred to the end of the movie where there is no distinction anymore. And I love that. I love that concept of it. And ultimately, in Vengeance, it takes, again, a more realistic approach. Here's what happens in a sense where you've lost all humanity and you go for vengeance. But I don't think it creates that compelling of a narrative or a story. I think this movie, in the best, simple way I can put it, it doesn't have that it quality that is so kind of like magnetic about other Park Chan-wook movies. It's a really bland way to describe why I didn't like this movie, but it doesn't feel like it has a push or something super unique to say about it. And it just kind of happens, and then it ends, and then nothing sticks to me. Nothing like that moment, like, look at the ramifications. There is one scene in particular that you're just kind of like, a little like, ugh, that's a little gross. And I sort of, which we'll get to probably more when we get to Hallmark scenes. But other than that, it just kind of came and went. And it's really surprising for a director. Like, Matt, you love Joint Security Agent, JSA.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very interesting case to look at and see how Park Chan-wook has developed. Because Old Boy is incredible. I think Thirst is really great. Stoker is, I feel like, a misstep, but that's because he made an American movie. And then you have The Handmaiden, which is probably his magnum opus. That or Old Boy. It's interesting. This just feels like, to me, like Park Chan-wook is exploring areas that he wants to touch on more later and hasn't necessarily gone to the full depths yet. I don't know what you thought about that.
So it's funny because I could see these seeds working much better if they had like the grandness and like the opulence of like another Park Chan-wook movie. So like we're gonna talk spoilers, obviously. So like for example, the scene where the deaf guy. I mean the deaf guy is the main character.
Rue.
Yeah, Rue. Yeah. He is watching TV with the little girl, and then he realizes that his sister, who he's doing this whole thing for, kills herself because she finds out that they're doing this ransom thing, and you could see if they added like the composer's name, who I think is one of the best, if not the best composer in film, who does all of his movies, Young Wook Jo. Like they had like this grand like swelling orchestra or something, and it's directed very dramatically. You could see that being filmed, and the narrative points also would match an Old Boy or Lady Vengeance or Handmaiden if they were filmed and displayed differently. Like you could have done this more grand, reveal or something. Are you guys there?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay. You guys freeze. Sometimes I think that like my
we're so drawn by your speech that we kind of are frozen shut.
We're
okay,
frozen.
yeah, sure. And so you could see that working, and I'm probably gonna be defending this movie more than anyone else here. I did appreciate it as just a different take on his movies, but also at the same time I'm disappointed because I love the typical Park Chan-wook movie. So it was disappointing to see how kind of like quaint the movie was. But I think the narrative points would have worked if it was shot differently. Like he's doing this stuff on purpose. And what was I gonna say? And going off Tyler's point where like the narrative feels kind of clunky, I would agree with that as well. You kind of have two different people pursuing revenge, and it never really feels like it hits that dramatic moment, which is being done on purpose. But still, like you have like so many great moments in Old Boy that feel like you're reading like a Shakespearean play or a Greek epic poem where like Odesu is like walking down the street and he's like, oh, am I just a beast now? And then someone helps him in the taxi, ends up being the guy who he's trying to hunt down. And then like later on, he has him in the room. He's like, oh, you could kill me now, or you can find out why I did the revenge. Like there's so many great things that feel like this literary epic that are just lacking in this movie because I think he purposely filmed it in a more gritty or realistic way. So that's generally how I feel about the movie.
See, my argument is we're talking a lot about the fact that we wanted there to be more grandiose and, like you said, literary kind of like significance to it. But I understand Park Chan-wook's intention is to not make that type of movie. But I'm trying to argue here, and I'm not like fighting any of your opinions. I'm just trying to say that I don't think it works in this movie. I think ultimately that I just don't think that.
Certain things specifically.
So my example, a good example for this, I haven't gotten a chance to see Green Room yet. I know I have to, but Jeremy Saulnier made a movie called Blue Ruin. Have you seen? Have you?
Yeah, I love Blue Ruin. I love it. I love almost everything Jeremy Saulnier has done.
Blue Ruin is one of those movies that goes, look at vengeance, look at violence, and look how graphic and realistic it is. Like there's that scene in the opening of Blue Ruin where he stabs the guy, and like blood forms in his eye, and then he spurts out and he dies, and you're like, Jesus Christ, is this what happens? Because it's not overdone. It's just a simple like little thing, and you're like, oh my God, that's so horrific. And this movie doesn't. It just is very muted, and I think that's a very good way. Even in like the cinematography, this movie's ugly, and not in a good way where it's showing the setting, because there is a little bit of like class disparity in this movie. Look at how the poor class is treated by the upper elite. It's just like, it's not like we're shining a light into the ugliness of the world. It's just an ugly looking movie. It has nice, like Mark, you said, it has wonderful camera shots, and Park Chan-wook is a wonderful director. He takes a lot of like Brian De Palma-esque kind of stylized angles and things like that. But then it's just so like flat and muted colors, and nothing looks appealing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's at moments where like I was like watching the film, and like the shot would change, and it like almost kind of looked like the color grade changed as well. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah,
I didn't notice that.
It's not consistent in this movie.
Okay,
it's not consistent. I was like, is this stylistically like is there a purpose to this, or like what's going on here? Like I just couldn't like thematically figure it out. Like because I think there's like one specific moment where the father I can't remember the father's name.
Park. I think there's just
just Park. Yeah, Mr. Park.
Or it's like Gong Jin Park or something like that. Yeah.
When he goes back to the river, just to where his daughter died. When he goes back to the river where his daughter died, like there's like one shot where it's like overhead of him, or it's like, a wide shot of him, and the color grade is one thing, and then it like cuts to like almost like a third person-esque shot, and like it kind of like the color grade changed.
Yep.
And I was like, is it supposed to like show that like his viewpoint is bleak now or something? Because it was like a really bleak like color filter. It was like very flat, like you said, Tyler. And I was like, I don't know if this works. What is this? And I like to like go back to like what you said, Tyler, about like how this movie sort of came and went, and there wasn't like any resounding like impact on, like on you or the viewer. It's like I'd like definitely agree with it. That's like a definitely good way of putting it. There's like also like a lot of like gaps in what happened in the story. Like it's like, oh, you know, they've done the kidnapping, the daughter's here now, like now we're here. It's like you're sort of like filling in the blank. And there was one moment, like the final scene was like kind of ruined for me for one reason, and it's because I know I'm sort of getting ahead of ourselves.
It's fine. This is
talking about
go
it.
crazy.
But when Mr. Park is stabbed by the terrorists,
yeah,
it's like they come out of the car and it's like it's implied like, oh, they look at the picture and then they see Mr. Park and they kill him.
Yeah.
And then after they kill him and they back up to the car and then they drive away, like you hear the dialogue from the woman who said like the terrorists will come for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, why did I need to hear that?
Yeah,
like,
that was
I
really
already
necessary.
sort of know.
Yeah.
I already know what happens.
So here's the thing. Joint Security Agency, whatever it is, was a massive success.
It's called JSA.
So JSA was a massive, massive success, and basically Park Chan-wook got free reign to make whatever movie he wanted. He got I think it was described as carte blanche, or whatever.
Yeah.
He can make. It was such a big success. He can make whatever he wants. That one inclusion feels like it was a little bit of a studio oversight, because you're right. Yeah. There is a startlingly, and this is actually one of the aspects I like, there is no exposition in this movie, and there is no characters go to places, and you have to piece it together while the scene is happening. There's often times a lot in this movie transition sequences where characters are walking. I think of when Ryu went to sell his liver and got scammed. He kind of has that idea, and there's a couple shots where he walks up the staircase and then meets the people, but it's those transition shots are where you kind of have to piece things together. Like, okay, I have an idea where he's going. That one instance felt like it was like an audience was like, we got to remind people, like, what the hell's happening? Because is he, like, who are these, like, and that is a very, very excellent point.
Yeah, it reminded me of, like, in the Blade Runner, where the studio made Harrison Ford do a terrible exposition, and then he just said he purposely made it bad so they wouldn't put it in the movie.
Yeah,
but they still put it anyways. And he's just literally monotone saying the exposition. But I agree, that really took me out, because like like literally, like that line happened like 20 minutes ago. Like audiences know, and it's very foreboding, so they're gonna remember it. It really felt necessary.
Yeah, I also what I like so much about the end scene as well is because you know, she says that line where like they'll come for you because I've showed them your face, and then like when the investigators like show up in her room after she's died, and they talk about like her sort of like left wing sort of organization that she was the only member.
Yeah.
It's like I thought like, oh, she bluffed. It was a bluff.
Yeah.
And then later on when the guys show up and you see the guy hold the picture, I was like, oh shit, she wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, this is like a really bleak ending. Like I kind of like this. And then the dialogue happens, and I was like, "Oh, really? Did you have to do that? The scene was about to end."
Yeah, that felt like major. That one felt like a studio going, it wasn't clear who these people are. Let's include this. We have given you everything else. Please, just like, and he's like, all right, fine, let's do it.
I loved how like up until that point, like before the dialogue happens, I was like, this is such like an indifferent ending, I guess you could say. Like these guys show up, don't say a word, and they just stab him. Yeah. And it's like, you've been sentenced to death. And then the dialogue, it's like, it would have been a good ending. It would have if it weren't for that dialogue, I would have liked this movie a little bit more.
There's that one of the things I really liked about that ending is one, I there's no score in this movie or nothing that stands out. Like there's no like really like, Old Boy, Matt, you love the Old Boy soundtrack, and that is extravagant.
I was very disappointed by the lack of score in this movie. I watched this a day earlier because I wanted to spend the next day just listening to the soundtrack.
Yeah. What about like those moments with like this like the scratchy like saxophone, like when he's like digging or whatever, and it's like whatever.
Yeah, I'm not listening to my own though.
Yeah.
Did you like? How did in like the context of the movie? Did you like it? Like, obviously, you're not going to listen to it outside of it.
Well, I kind of forgot about it until you brought it up, to be honest. So it didn't really have any impact on me.
Okay.
Well, like, scores like that, like, you think of, Mark, you just rewatched The Social Network. Social Network doesn't have any bombastic score, but it has that constant melody throughout. That sense of, like, atmosphere, and this movie doesn't have that, or at least nothing memorable. Like I can think of the Social Network score and go, that's a Social Network score. This movie doesn't really have anything that stands out, but ultimately, I think that benefits in some areas. The final scene, again, we're jumping ahead, but when he stabs and then the credits roll and you just hear him breathing and kind of like wheezing and the life goes out of him, I'm like, that's great. That's a wonderful touch. Like, leave the audience like just being like, ugh, like I feel so gross at the end. I was a big fan of that. Can we talk about the autopsy scene?
Oh.
Can we talk about how fucking great that scene is? That's the best scene in the movie.
That's definitely up there for me.
Yeah, I have like that was like the one time where it was just like I was so engrossed where they show them. Okay, so context: the daughter accidentally drowns in the movie. She slips into a river, and then they find her body and they conduct an autopsy and they show the opening of her chest cavity. They show the cut, and then you cut to the actor, the father Park. And it just like you just like treat it to like the chest cavity opening, like the sound effects and a saw and the the sick like wet crunch, and he's just like depressed and crying as we're just focused on the father and we're just left to wonder. Fucking great scene. I was so engrossed in that. I don't know what you guys thought about like just the effect of the sound design. It's just so like.
Yeah.
Yes.
I definitely really enjoyed that scene, especially like when it just cuts to his face and you just hear the like one of the people performing the autopsy and they're like saw.
Saw. Lung
and,
swollen.
Like, yeah. And then he's just like slowly crying. And what I really liked is when he finds the other body at the river and brings it to the autopsy, and it's just him standing over it, and he's just like completely indifferent, just straight face, stoic. Like I was just like, I just like.
The actor's name is Kang.
He's in every Bong Joon-ho movie.
No. Is he?
He's in KSA.
Is he like the most prolific South Korean actor? Is that kind of like?
Must be one of them because he's literally.
He's just the best.
So much.
Like he honestly he is good in about 50% of this movie. I
think he's good in all of it. What is he not good in?
I think this movie is like. He's just like he's too subdued half the time. He's such a great like expression actor, and half the time he's just like stoic. And then when he finally shows emotion, you're like, yes. You're like he's
underutilized. He's underutilized.
I think that's a good way to put it. I think he is underutilized in this movie. He's not a bad actor in any regards.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about the drowning scene.
Yeah, okay, go for it. Let's do it.
So again, going back to the idea that this movie is purposefully subdued. Like you could see the scene in Old Boy, and you could think of a million ways to shoot it really dramatically. But I really like the idea because it plays with the fact that the main character is deaf. How he's just like burying his dead sister, and there's just like this one quick cut to the dead girl's body just going down the river, and that scene really worked for me. I really liked it because going back to the whole realistic aspect that you probably wouldn't have gotten in Old Boy or Lady Vengeance or JSA because this movie's going for a different tone. I just really liked how it played with like the characters' own disabilities. And what do you guys think of that? Do you think that it was handled well, or?
I'm gonna have a controversial opinion, so Mark, you go first.
That scene definitely had quite an impact. Because I think like few moments throughout the film where like. You get the Ryu's point of view, and it's like no audio. It's like you just see it from his point, and in the background that the girl is drowning, and then it cuts to her just like her like lifeless body just floating down the river. It was like that was quite a scene, and I think it was one of the stronger scenes of the movie, I guess you could say. I'll let Tyler go. He's ready to go.
I like a third of that scene, and I like the shot where it's framed where you see her fall in and he's just like mourning, and then she's like, hey, help. This is gonna sound so terrible. I am so against kids dying in movies. I will not watch movies because I do not want to see a kid get
Lady Vengeance.
But I wanted okay. This is gonna sound terrible and taken out of context. I wanted more struggle from I was like, that's it. I was not emotionally moved.
You said that. That's it?
I wanted in a movie that's so focused on the realistic.
Keeping in mind that Tyler just started teaching a month ago, so his opinion on children dying has probably changed.
Okay, that's a good one. I
Sounds
want
good, Matt.
that was a good one.
I have a rebuttal.
I
to
got
this, but I'll
silence,
let you
please.
finish the point.
I can't. So basically, in a movie that's so focused on realistic consequences of actions, her going like "help" and then a float to the dead body.
Well, it's not going to help. You see her go like cry
Because she
for
goes
help.
like, "Hey," and then you see her go under. I wanted like a little more fight. I wanted to feel like emotionally drained. Like, holy shit.
Well,
Okay. This actually has like a genuine point to it, not just me saying I wanted to see a kid die longer.
Yeah,
Take that out of context.
you would love House that Jack built now. I think
Oh,
you have a
God.
totally different
Oh,
opinion on it.
God. Okay, so basically, in a movie that is the not the climactic action. That is the turning point of the movie. That's the catalyst. It's the martyr. It's however you want to put it. I wish it was a little more kind of like visceral, so we kind of not comprehended, but we like sympathize more with Park's actions. Like, we just witnessed his daughter die awfully. Like, yeah, go get him. Like, go get your revenge. Like, I wish it was just like a little bit.
But
like,
the autopsy
worse.
scene kind of makes up for it, doesn't it?
well, I think
That's just in a capacity, yes.
the way I see it and the way I interpreted the movie is like I think the scene was played out the right way because it sort of fits the theme of like just this indifferent universe. Just like it's basically like shit happens.
Yeah.
It's like you don't really need to dwell on it for too long. I mean, you sort of get like, I mean, like there's that moment where Ryu or what Rue goes to like Rue goes to the bank of the river and it sees her body and he's like the water's too deep and then you see like the guy go out and take her necklace, but it's like there's like that shot of her just like floating in the water. It's just like it's so bleak. The whole movie's just so bleak. It's just like it just fits thematically. Like,
and every death is like that too. I mean, the sister's death. He just finds her dead in the bathroom, and you don't get.
Does she cut herself? Does she cut her wrist?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And you get this like really emotional scene from the main character, and then like his girlfriend dies off camera, and then even the two main characters. I mean, the deaf guy dies off camera, and the main character just gets stabbed like Julius Caesar style.
Even the organ people die off camera.
Yeah,
sort of.
true.
Yeah. Well,
So,
no, one guy gets stabbed in the neck, and then don't move it. That's an artery, and then it goes.
Oh yeah, he takes it out.
You're like, oh, and that one other guy shits himself. They really focused on that shit for a little bit.
That's like another thing. Like, this movie feels like it's going for more dark humor than any of the other movies, I think. So you have the scene where he pulls the thing out, and it's funny because he's a terrible necrophilia guy, and then you have the scene where the homeless guy, you think he's gonna go save the little girl, and he just bites off the necklace and then leaves, and then the guy's like, and then the main character's like, well, I thought this was deeper because when I went this when I was 5 years old and it was over my head. And there's like, and then you have like the scene where like when you first introduce the Parks character, where you realize he's like kind of heartless, where the guy jumps in front of the car and he's about to like, and he's like trying to kill himself, but the knife isn't sharp enough for him to really do any damage. So there's a lot of weird, like I have a quote where Park Chan-wook says he likes putting like random scenes of humor in his movies because it's like unsettling, catches you off guard. Okay. Do you find those like dark humor scenes to work, or
they're very like you said, they're not in his other movies.
There's like little bits of humor in his other movies, but not as like obviously dark.
I would say the funniest his humor pops back up again in Thirst. There are like moments where like that it's like dark absurdist humor in Thirst where things happen and it just kind of makes you like gahuff a little bit, like the or something like that, like whoa. I don't know, this is like a tonal like calamity for me. Like things sometimes match and some things sometimes don't match. The humor works in parts and doesn't work in parts. It's a mess for me, basically. What did you think, Matt?
I think it did work to a certain extent. Like I did laugh when he pulls out the thing, because obviously the guy is a horrible human being, so you don't really feel any sympathy for him.
Yeah.
But
sympathy.
The circle is complete.
Yes. 10 out of 10. It kind of worked for when the daughter died. It was like I kind of chucked a little bit when like for like in my head I was like, oh, like the homeless guy's gonna save her. Like it'd be kind of a funny thing for like this guy who obviously has like mental disabilities, like ends up having more of a heart and bravery than the main character. But then he just bites off the necklace and leaves. So that was kind of funny. I would say did work. But also did feel kind of out of place at times. I don't know, Mark. What did you think? Did you laugh or?
There's not really
Mark
any
was
points
too
in this
drunk
movie.
to laugh at that point.
No, there was no points in the movie where I really laughed. Like the scene where you talked about when he pulls the knife out. I was like, that was kind of a funny moment where she's like, "Don't pull it out," and he goes, "What?" I was so like, I mean, like.
Then he's like on the ground. He's like going like this on the ground, like for the whole rest of the scene.
Yeah.
I was like sort of still in shock for like that scene because you see like what's like before he gets stabbed in the neck, you just see what's like going on in that room, and you're like, what the hell is this? Is disgusting.
Yeah.
And I was like still like sort of in shock from that, so the humor didn't really get to me. I don't think there was any point in this movie where I laughed. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm kind of like it's hard for me to laugh in a movie, like unless it's like labeled a comedy, I'm not gonna laugh. I'm like
Mark only laughs when it says applause. Or
yeah.
he only likes sitcoms. I don't want to laugh.
Yeah. There's actually an end credit scene to The Master where Paul Thomas Anderson says, "You may clap now," and I was like, "Yes, sir."
Oh God.
Yeah, that's when you woke up.
Yeah, that's when I woke up. Yeah. But like besides like the laughing part, like I definitely agree with you that on the thematic parts of the film.
Yeah. Also, there's a scene where earlier on where the sister's like is like moaning in pain because she has a kidney infection or whatever. And then the guys next are and like the three brothers or whatever are like jerking off. Four brothers are like all in the same bed thinking that she's having sex and they're passing into it.
And there's that one where some guy has like taped a picture to the back of the guy's head and he moves it when like the guy looks, he like takes the head back so he can look at the photo. Yeah, that one was like, that one felt like the best instant of dark comedy.
Yeah.
It's like look at just like how like disgusting this world is. And like, and that one just felt kind of funny. I know I just like contrasted. I said earlier the movie visually is ugly, but doesn't focus enough on the ugliness of the world. That is like the one instance of it where it kind of does, where it's just like you're like, God, this is so gross, and like you can hear like the apartments around them. It's so clustered, and you hear people having sex. I think someone hitting someone, and a baby crying, and a dog barking. It's like, what kind of world do they live in? And I think they're like, I've been shitting on this movie a lot. Mark to a lesser extent. This is not a bad movie. Like there's like it would be like erroneous to say this is a bad movie.
Just has like he has such high bar to live up to.
That's the thing though, is we're basically stepping back through like the first Park Chan-wook movie I saw besides Old Boy was Handmaiden, and I watched his two best movies like right off the bat. So then Thirst is a little bit lower. I wasn't super high on Stoker, and then this one just kind of, like I said before, there are aspects where we can see is like I really want to explore sex and violence and vengeance and like what that does.
And children flailing around in the ocean while they struggle to breathe.
There's not an ocean; it's a river.
River, whatever.
Come on, you didn't watch the movie.
No, I didn't.
And it's one of those things where his ideas are clearly developing. You could get to something like even Stoker, for an example. I'm not that high on Stoker. I think Stoker's adequate. But Stoker focuses on violence and sex being intertwined in some kind of coming-of-age aspect. That's a wonderful ground to cover. In Handmaiden, I said it before in our Handmaiden review and in other times, that Handmaiden sex has its own narrative arc in the movie.
Yeah, it's oppressing and liberating. It's like, things like that.
It's incredible to watch how sex goes, and you're right, from something of a symbol of the patriarchy and oppression to something of liberation, freedom, and it's ultimately it's this ideas that are almost there in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. They never quite do anything special, and I think that's the best way to put it. And I think that's what I struggled with. I struggled with the most. Also, this movie is not well paced, and it's too long. It's 130 minutes, and it's a slow movie, and there isn't enough to justify the slow, I feel like.
Actually, 121 minutes.
What?
It's 121 minutes, actually.
You're invalidated.
No, I'm not invalidated. Wait, no, it's
You're
not.
wrong.
I didn't really have a problem with the length, to be honest. It's kind of as somebody like, obviously, this is one of the shorter Park Chan-wook movies.
Joker's only
so-
90 minutes, so
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I say one of the shorter, not the shortest. So watch
Shut
yourself. I don't know. I didn't really have a problem with the length. I think I was most like into the story than either of you two. So I think that probably played a part into it.
Yeah.
I do think that it does kind of like the main climax is purposefully anticlimactic, but also at the same time I was kind of disappointed by how anticlimactic it was.
yeah.
When you think they're gonna have a final confrontation, it turns out that Park was one step ahead and he touches the doorknob and he just gets shocked.
Yeah.
And I did like the scene in the river though, when they're like their last scene where, obviously the deaf guy is like scared out of his mind. And
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter to Park. He like just goes underwater like a shark. And
Yeah.
he cuts his Achilles
Achilles.
heels. Oh, Greek reference.
Yeah. Oh, whoa. That scene is that cutting the Achilles heel is so much better done in I Saw the Devil. Where he went and I saw ceiling. It's like, oh, I'm thinking, okay, so there's a scene. I'm gonna it's not a spoiler. No, you're fine. There's nothing. It's not a narrative scene where basically you watch some guy stick a knife or a pencil or something into the Achilles heel and then rip it. Like it's like it's so like you're just like, what the fuck? You're like, it's so great. Man, I gotta rewatch the movie. I might recommend that.
You should recommend it because I want to watch it again.
I mean, wait, what was my point again? Where was I going?
Something about underwhelming, or we
Oh,
talked about
yeah.
the like the last scene between Park and
I like how he's just like, I have to do this. Like I've already gone down this path. I can't stop now.
Yeah.
And he's just scared, and you're like the shark dives under, then cuts it, and it's like and the blood spills up, and he dies. It's great. I also like how you get these shots at the end that he dismembered him to bury his body.
Yes.
Without like you just get that quick like munchable bags, and you're like, oh my god, he cut his entire body apart, which adds to a new level. Which not only he took vengeance, but he acted in his own self-interest to stay alive and keep going to hide the murders.
Yeah.
Kind of like the extra like desecrating the body. Like this is a fight like you can't rest, kind of like that like Egyptians would mummify so they could carry on to the next life. You desecrate a body and it doesn't work like that. It's interesting. I think there are interesting stuff in this movie.
There's also like the degree that he wants him to suffer as well.
Yeah.
Like he could have just slit his throat and that would have been the end of it, but he chooses to make him drown as well.
Yeah.
So there's Park really becomes not very sympathetic towards the end. There's also like the weird. What did you think of like the whole organ donor subplot? I liked it, but it felt like a weird. Like when he goes to get revenge on them, it felt very, very, very awkward to me.
Yes, I get it's very important to the plot because it's like the main driving force of getting the organ for his sister. But when he goes back, I was like, why am I watching this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's interesting to watch, but it's like, why is this happening now?
What's the idea of vengeance? It's just like we have to.
I guess,
vengeance, like look what happens when you serve it. Ultimately, him getting revenge on those people is what leads to him being captured. Because he's away from his house.
True.
For Park, it's the idea of hubris. He was screwed over, and he wants to get his revenge, and then that's it. And like the hubris is that he got caught and got killed.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's just kind of and like look, Park killed that girl. He got the information he needed. He knew he could tie the people together, but he killed her, and it was his own hubris. If he didn't kill her, he would survive at the end. It's just ultimately kind of like the idea of it all.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to get into Hallmark scenes?
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you guys? I have 5 nominations for this. I don't know if you guys have any. Like if you guys.
I just have 2.
You have 2.
I have 2 as well.
Yeah.
Should I list them down? And then come to an agreement on one.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Go Tyler.
All right. So I have the autopsy scene, and then I have in parentheses, "Dear God, the sounds." I have the man cuts himself in front of the car. He's like, huh, and like, and he
it's supposed to be like really dramatic.
Yeah, and then
side scene, and just can't do anything.
He just can't do anything, and then like he goes up and he looks like he's gonna confront him, but he just knocks the knife out and they just wrestle him to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's bleeding. I have verbatim the masturbating to sounds of agony.
Yeah,
I thought was just really like great. That's in a notebook now in my possession. I have Ryu takes out the organ donors. Like the violence in this movie, I think is well done to a certain extent. And
Oh
then
no,
I have,
yeah, I would say it's well done as well.
and then I have the final scene, but mainly the sound effects as the credits roll. I don't know if
Okay.
you guys had any other than those 5.
I have.
Uh,
Oh, you can go, Mark.
I think one that you didn't mention was the one that sort of like I was like, oh crap, was the scene where Rue gets the suicide letter. Because that scene sort of starts out and it's like, it's kind of implied that he's kind of like, is he like implied that he's a pedophile, right? Because he's sort of like trying to look under the dress of the girl. Like it was like really disturbing. I was like, what the hell am I watching? Did you guys pick up on that?
No.
Was he just trying to play with her?
I think he was just trying to play with.
I didn't.
Okay. Because he kept trying to like look under her like dress or whatever. It was really weird. It was a really weird interaction.
I don't.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah,
I
I
didn't-
don't.
Maybe
I
go
think
back
that's-
and go back and look because I was watching
Yeah.
that and I was like, this is disgusting. And then she like sits on his stomach and then she like hands him the letter and then he looks at it and then he like freaks out and runs in and then he sees his sister dead and it was like this whole like flux of emotions in like the span of like 30 seconds and that part like that was like one of like the really like gut punching parts of the film for me. I'm surprised that you guys didn't
The
pick
suicide,
up on that as well.
I was kind of like, I was in the same boat as Matt. It feels like the whole point of this journey was for that purpose. I wanted like more weight to it. It kind of just came and went and was like, all right, his sister's dead now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like I think for me, like that's like the part of like the indifferent part of the movie, I guess,
Yeah.
is like this shit happens.
Yeah, I like the
and-
scene.
Yeah.
I like the indifferent. Like I was just saying that compared to like another Park Chan-wook movie where it could have been more dramatic. My point there was say like the narrative points would fit for a more dramatic Park Chan-wook movie. It's just the way it was shot. Are those all your hallmark scenes?
And then the other hallmark scene for me was I really like the end scene up until the point where like you get that like repeating part of exposition or dialogue or whatever. But like those are the two for me.
Yeah, I just have one scene you guys haven't mentioned, which is actually my favorite movie. My favorite scene in the whole movie is when Park is sitting in the ball pit of his daughter. He's in his daughter's room. And he's just sitting there crying, and it's like he's in the ball pit, and there's like all these stuffed animals all around the room, and you get this really horrible like sense of innocence lost. And that scene more than any other scene stuck with me because, you know, it's all about like trying to protect her innocence and then she dies and it's all the stuff is still here as like a reminder of who she is and like the innocence that she possessed. And that scene was really sad to me. And that was probably like my most like impactful scene.
That's
of
a
the
good
whole movie.
scene. Yeah. Do we have a conglomeration or a narrate of we can vote for the best scene from Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance? If you guys to put in one nomination, what would it be? Ultimately, like the one that stuck with you. I'm going the autopsy scene for me.
For me, it's the sitting in the kids' room scene.
In the kids' room. Mark?
I would probably agree with Tyler. Like it's not like one of my hallmark moments, but I think that's one of the strongest scenes in the film is the autopsy scene. So I'd probably like agree with you, Tyler, on that one.
So Matt, it's 2-1. Do you concede your point?
No.
Damn it. Okay.
I demand a recount.
We want to recount. Okay. So you have our stuff. Mark's sleepy time moments. If you guys don't know what that is, I'll explain it every time until people do. Mark falls asleep.
He actually wants to explain it.
I like this is my favorite part of the day. Mark falls asleep sometimes during movies, wakes up, claps, writes down in his little notebook because he doesn't want to put stuff on Letterboxd because we're not as cool. And then gives it 4 stars. And so instead of low points in the movie, we just call it Mark's sleepy time. Least favorite scenes in the movie. I have 2.
For me, it would just be like the climax. You know, expecting a huge a more dramatic showdown between the 2 main characters.
So the lack of climax then.
Yeah.
Mark, same for you?
I would probably say like I was like it was a sleepy time for the first 40 minutes. I was just waiting for the movie
to happen. It's a drunk time
happen.
for Mark.
Yeah, drunk time.
Yeah, drunk time.
Yeah, you're hungry, you're recovering and then being hungover, yeah.
Yeah, I was really bored is kind of like a strong word, but I was just like
uninterested
waiting for the first 45 minutes.
Misguided.
I was checking the time. I was like, how far am I into this? When is this going to start?
Damn it.
So, yeah, I'd say, like, yeah, the latter half of the film is much more interesting than the first half.
All right, my 2 is Yusun's death. Yusun where she dies. I put in parentheses, I wanted more tragedy. I wanted a little more weight to that. And then my second one was the dead girl vision, where Park sees the vision of his dead daughter.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
But
that was
that one
weird.
felt like the end scene where we're getting a literal manifestation of his guilt. We know his guilt. We just saw him sit in the ball pit, like you just said, and like, look at his innocence, look at the innocence lost. And then it immediately cuts, and it's like, look at the weight of his guilt. It's like, we already know the weight of his guilt. We've just spent the entire movie establishing this is a real consequences. We get it.
Yeah.
We just watched her. It's weird, and it feels out of place, and I didn't like it.
Also, there's that weird part where the next morning that guy comes who Mr. Park pays, and like there's that quick shot where he looks at the ground, and then it just shows a cut of the water.
Yeah.
And then it like cuts away to the next scene, and it's like sort of implied that it's like somehow in reality. I mean, obviously, like, you know, obviously it's obviously a vision, but it's like, what was Mr. Park doing? Was he just
I like
dripping
peed himself. I was like, doesn't make any sense though.
Yeah.
Also, like the whole thing where he rescues that other little boy, brings him to the hospital.
Oh, that was weird.
That was like, I couldn't figure out what the significance to that was.
I think it was like, I was like, the way when it's sort of, when he brings the boy to the hospital for the first time, it's like, oh, well, he couldn't save his daughter, so at least he can save this boy. It's like,
but then at the end, he ignores it. He's like, are you a father? And then at the end, he's just like, nah. Like,
well,
maybe it's like saying like, oh, he tried to go for the peaceful, like you can like the peaceful route, but then revenge was just more satisfying to him. He didn't care by that point.
Yeah, but I think like when he hears that the boys died, like, and he's at that point he's had his revenge. It's like he's like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah,
he's like, it's done. And I kind of like that part of the story. So yeah.
Can I bring up one more weird thing before we get into guessing game and grades?
Okay.
In that dead girl scene, there's that quick shot where she wraps her legs around Park. And then when he goes to fight the bad guys, there's that same exact shot where he's being choked out and he smiles and then wraps his legs around it the same way.
Oh, yeah.
And then stabs a person. I was like, that's too similar. That's weird. And I don't know the point of it. Like, is it just Park Chan-wook like, that's a cool move? Is he just like, oh my God.
It's embrace of love and embrace of violence.
Oh, and how it's like a
intertwined.
Yin yang. The two sides of Matt, if I could high
You're
five.
a genius.
See, that's why my review for Sympathy, your recommendation is objective, and your reviews are going to be biased.
Yeah, we're biased. We suck. All right, guessing game. I did about 3 minutes of research on the IMDb trivia board and found some basic information. This script was written slightly before. It was worked on before JSA. And then after JSA, Park Chan-wook was given free reign, and he wanted to focus on a vengeance-minded script, but he couldn't find one, so he went back to this one. How long did it take for him to touch up or finish this script after he decided to go back to it?
Probably 10 years.
10 years. Mark, a year.
I don't know when JSA came out.
2000. This script took 20 hours of nonstop work and was finished.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like,
that's really good. He wrote that in 20 hours.
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed.
Edited it and everything.
Wow.
All right, ready? In film history, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance has the first instance of this scene happening in film history. What scene is that?
4 guys jacking off in a bed together.
Well, to the agony of
probably the first like death sex scene.
Matt, right on the nose. The first sex scene with sign language in it. Yes, it is the first time in film history there's been a sex scene with sign language in it. Matt, good job.
Just a master of Park Chan-wook.
Holy crap. In the autopsy scene, what is the actor looking at during all of this?
Like in real life or
yeah, what is he actually looking at when he's reacting?
I would think they probably put a body prosthetic.
Body prosthetic? Mark?
Wait, which part are you talking about?
When they're doing the autopsy scene and they cut to Park, what is the actor Kang Ho Song looking at? Don't laugh at my pronunciation, Matt. I saw that smile.
Some dead animal maybe or something.
Nothing. There was nothing on the table. That was all his own acting. Just kind of going off of it.
I'm riding high. I got that
I
second
know, I
question
can
right.
tell.
I'm like, yeah, I'm so smart.
The actor, Hae Kyun Shin, who plays Rue, got injured on set. How and during what scene was he injured?
Probably during the fight scene with
Which fight scene?
the one with the organ donors.
Okay. Mark?
Probably on the stairs or something.
Well, yeah, when he's like, I mean, obviously he wasn't like held up and choked, but
It was actually during his fight scene with Park when he's knocked out and he's being slapped and punched. They could not special effects that. That was actually the actors slapping each other, and he was very bruised. And then the actor Kang Ho Song took him out for a drink afterwards.
Wow.
So he was real. So when he's getting smacked, that was really him getting smacked.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that. I was like watching that and I was like, that's a real person. That's not like a dummy body.
No, that was really him. What, and this is my final one, what was the total budget of all three movies in the Vengeance Trilogy combined?
Probably like 50 million or something crazy low like that.
50 million?
Yeah.
Mark?
I'm so bad at budgets.
Come on, you got this. I believe in you. You can have a better guess than Matt.
Yeah, I can tell I'm wrong by how Tyler responds.
I don't know if it's less or more.
Come on, you got one of them. They're 50-50. You have a 50-50 shot to go higher or lower.
So it's either 25 million or 75 million. I'll go with 25 million. No, I'm kidding. That's bad. 75 million.
You guys suck. The total budget of all the three movies combined was 11.5 million.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And it made box office wise, it made 40 million. So
Wow.
Three movies at about $3.5 million each. Maybe one had a little bit more. I haven't seen Sympathy for Lady Vengeance yet. That's really good. That's
incredible.
The shelf life of these movies and the budget is absurd. It's amazing.
Also, A Clockwork Orange was on a $3 million budget.
Was it really? That's kind of...
Yeah.
Huh.
It's kind of crazy.
All right.
Now movies need CGI aliens
Do need
and all this crap.
Now you
Make
need
it better.
250.
Everyone remembers Jurassic World 2, Fallen Kingdom.
What was
Take
the most...
notes, Scorsese.
Yeah. What was the most expensive? What wasn't that Pirates of the Caribbean, the Dead Man Tales No Tale? Or no, it was like At World's End or something like that. It cost like $350 million to make.
I thought John Carter was the most expensive movie.
John Carter was the biggest flop.
Oh, okay.
It cost so much, but I'm pretty sure like the Pirates movie made money, but it just cost. I'm gonna look up real quick while we get to grades. Grades, Matt, Mark, you guys are gonna go first while I look this up. Grades, we grade stuff on an A, B, C, D, F scale, no plus or minuses because I want to, because why not at this point? We're like 40 episodes deep, and I'm not changing.
We're dug in.
Mark, what are you gonna give Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and give a quick little like bland kind of thing?
I'm gonna give it a C. There's a lot of aspects that I liked, but the fact that it took me 40 minutes to get into it really, really hindered my admiration for the film. Park Chan-wook is a very, very good director, and I love Old Boy, but this film is very obviously one of his early works. It's clear that, I mean, I've only seen this in Old Boy, but everything in Old Boy is much more, I wouldn't say nuanced, but much more. Park Chan-wook was much more. He had a better idea of what he wanted to say, and I just don't think he was quite there yet with this film. So it'll have to be a very strong C from me.
I'm gonna give it a B. I like this movie a lot. It's weird that JSA came out before this because JSA has more of like the extravagance, the more like gravitas that you'd expect of a traditional Park Chan-wook movie. It has more of the emotion, better score, more of that tragedy element to it. So I mean, as someone who loves Park Chan-wook a lot, I think he's one of the best directors ever. I appreciated this different tone, although I was disappointed at the same time. But yeah, this movie's a solid B for me.
I'm gonna give this movie a C. I would put it ultimately. I do. It's probably my least favorite Park Chan-wook movie, and I haven't been able to see JSA or the Cyborg one or Sympathy for Lady Vengeance or any of the TV stuff he's been able.
We're gonna be doing that next time.
We're doing that one next for our next director series of Park Chan-wook. But ultimately, I think a lot of what I've mirrored is that I think there are interesting themes here that are never put fully into into like its potential. I think I think a lot of the things here are muted and very dull and simple and not unique. And I don't think the movie looks good. I think the movie's well directed, but I think the movie's cinematography wise is pretty ugly. I think the performances are good despite the main I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. The guy who plays Park being underutilized, like Mark said. I think there's just a lot of wasted potential here, and I think it's the blossoming of a wonderful set of ideas that Park Chan-wook has. It's just it's like his intro movie. If this was his first movie, I'd be like, this is a great sign for a director.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so yeah, that's kind of what I want to go at. So Matt, you gave it a B, and then Mark and I gave it C's. But you want to know let's go to the top 5 most expensive movies of all time. How many Avengers movies do you think are in that top 5?
1.
2.
2? There are 3. Number 5.
All 3.
Avengers: Infinity War. Number 4.
Oh, right. Endgame.
Okay, I'll give you the numbers too. 5 is Avengers: Infinity War at $316 million. Number 4, Avengers: Endgame at $356 million. Number 3 is Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End at $370 million. Number 2, Avengers: Age of Ultron at $394 million.
Wow.
This is adjusted for inflation, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
Okay.
Number 1, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger's Tides.
That was like the worst one of the Pirates movies.
$430 million it took to make that movie.
How much of that was just Johnny Depp's paycheck, though?
$428 million of that. That movie, which is not good in any capacity, it's the worst Pirates movie, cost $430 million to make.
The one with
Penelope Cruz.
Blackbeard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one where they didn't have Orlando Bloom in it or anything.
Yep.
And it just felt like a really weird spin-off movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I actually like the trilogy, the Pirates trilogy.
They're so good. They're
like
so
At World's End
underrated.
is a legitimately satisfying conclusion to like that series.
The effects of Davy Jones are wonderful. I watched the two.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When he puts the tentacles in that guy's face.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I love. I mean, obviously, I love Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
We should do a special. We're talking about the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy.
But people
I would
say
love
like
to do
only the
that.
first one's good. I disagree with that completely.
I fully disagree. I think every scene that like Davy Jones is in, like I'm just gripped to the screen, and like just the big extravagant battles at World's End is just
when they're in like the void thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I loved so much was when Jack Sparrow was in Davy Jones' locker with the crabs and the boat in the desert. That was awesome.
Everything with Barbossa is great because he's the bad guy in the first movie, then he's like the good guy in the third movie. There's so much good stuff in that trilogy.
We should do those movies one time.